Hi, I'm Tanay. I'm one of the co-founders at Moonfrog Labs. We're a 5-year-old mobile games company based out of Bangalore, India.
Let's start with what your background is and how you actually got into the gaming industry.
Sure. So I'm a computer engineer by training. Worked as a software engineer for many years before I got a degree in business management, and then worked in various product and sale roles before I actually joined a gaming company called Zynga. Spent 4 years over there before we started Moonfrog.
So what is the thought process behind starting Moonfrog, right? I mean, there are a lot of large Indian gaming companies. What is it, that kind of differentiates Moonfrog Labs from everybody else that's out there in the market?
Got it. When we started Moonfrog, we wanted to focus on the mobile market. In 2013, we thought that was a great opportunity. We had just started seeing that market take off. We had seen the Play Store take off recently, and the Apple Store had been around for a couple of years. It was an interesting time to get into the market. At Zynga, we were focused on building a lot of games on the Facebook platform. And my co-founders and I believe there was an opportunity on mobile. And we brought complementary skill sets to each other, from tech to product to design and business. And we focused on starting Moonfrog.
So in this current day and age where, the Indian industry is, thought of as, trying to either ape the West or build in India and sell abroad. I mean, what is it, what was your thought process behind being India first with respect to the kind of content and, the strategy of actually going after only the Indian market?
Right. It's a fairly large population base, it's a fairly large user base, and the market will eventually grow, right? I mean, we've seen this in various industries. We've seen that with e-commerce. It's a growing market. It's very hard to penetrate a saturated market, but being an early mover, whether on a platform or in a new market, is always advantageous. It's always easier to get into, and it's a land grab at that point in time. And if you figure out genres that work well, or if you can capture a large audience space, it makes sense to do that early on when nobody else is focusing on that.
So, I mean, what I found very interesting about Moonfrog when I was doing my research was the fact that, your fundamental monetizing strategy is not looking to create advertising. But it's more to do with, I mean, you mentioned in your talk recently that, you are looking for more of a social interaction. Can you expand on that a little bit more?
See, my team and I worked on large global games before we started Moonfrog, and we've seen that model work very well across the globe. If you build the right product, and if you build the right economies and run live ops in the right fashion, users will pay. And if you create inherent value for the user in the game, they're happy to pay for it. And if you maintain trust, the payments grow over time. And that's what we saw with our games as well.
So you've got two, very, very, very popular games, including Teen Patti Gold and Ludo, the Ludo game that you've got on Facebook Messenger, right? Just talk a little bit more about, obviously, your monetizing strategies for them, and how you believe that currency, in-game currency, is actually helping you create social interactions.
So we're very confident that if we find the right product market fit, we'll be able to monetize our users by creating a viable economy which users can engage with and value, and in turn we can monetize with. For example, when we launched Teen Patti Gold, we actually launched without any payments in the game. And for the first few months, that's how the game ran. Or for the first few weeks, that's how the game ran. Over time, you keep on experimenting and adding new features. You make sure your user retaining, they like the game, and they can engage with the game. Eventually, it becomes about managing economies in the game. And you can think about it as inflow of virtual currency into the game and an outflow of currency out of the game. And there's an exchange rate with real money for these currency, right? So you can buy, you go to the app store, you can buy, let's say, you can spend 100 rupees and buy a few thousand coins or chips to play in a game, right? So that's exchange rate. Maintaining this is important, and managing this is important. It's like managing GDP of a small country, right? So it's a fairly complex problem, and you're working on it day in and day out, and that's what drives good monetization over time. So live ops is really important. So even with Ludo, I mean, for the first few weeks or months, we never focused on monetization. It's just recently that we started to look at it, right? Our goal was to approach a new platform like instant games and see if we can capture the market, if we can get in early and capture a large part of the audience. And again, very similar philosophies for both games, but one was focused on the India market and geography, and the other was focused on a new platform.
Let's talk a little bit more about how wildly popular Ludo Club and Teen Patti Gold are.
Yeah, so we're very surprised by the market, and I think it's just the beginning. We've seen our user base on Ludo grow 3x year over year over the last 3 years, and our revenues have doubled year over year. So, for example, Teen Patti Gold was about 3 million daily active users at the beginning of this year, and by the end of this year, we just started with December, we had 4.2 million daily active users. So we're pretty excited about the opportunity and the market size in India, and we still think there's a lot of room to grow. Similarly, on Ludo Club, on instant games, we are the number 2 game on instant games globally, and Ludo Club has a DAU of 2.1 million at this point in time.
So let's also go, I mean, you are also one of the companies that has gone to raise some venture capital in order to obviously fuel the business and be able to grow a lot faster. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to aspiring game, indie studios and, game developers and entrepreneurs, on what is it that, venture capital and angel, investments in India need to, I'm going to do this again. You've obviously gone ahead to raise a fair amount of money to obviously fuel the company and actually be able to do a lot more things. What is the kind of advice that you would probably offer to budding game entrepreneurs and game designers and developers and indie studios? What are the benchmarks that they need to achieve so that they are ready to be able to raise capital?
Absolutely. So I'll talk from my experience, right? I mean, there are various different scenarios and different cases where people get funded. My team and I had proven experience in the industry for a few years. We had run profitable games in the past, and I think that when we started Moonfrog, that helped us raise our first seed round on the basis of past experience and capability. And of course, you talk to investors and you give them a plan and they ask you 100 questions, but it's also about making sure that you have a crystal clear plan or at least an approach to how you're going to tackle a new market. So it's a combination of market opportunity plus the team. Our second round of funding, or the Series A, was largely dependent on the actual execution that we showed over the last 1 year after our seed round, right? It was about the games that we built, it was about the numbers that we demonstrated, and the business that we built from there. So it's a combination of both. My advice to budding entrepreneurs or game developers would be to really master your skill, right? I mean, spend time making games, spend time making a lot of games, churn them out, put them up on the store, play test them with people, be willing to throw away stuff and move on to new ideas. I think one of the things that we saw was we do a lot of games, but the games that really succeed, we had early indications that this will succeed. Either there's a huge interest from your user base, or your numbers show that the game is going to be successful. When we launched Teen Patti, for example, we had no monetization in the game. It was fairly early in the market. We had a D1 retention of 60%, and we knew that we had some goodness over there, right? And then you build over time.